Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Mr. Fix-It channel. Today I want to talk about tools. The types of tools that I use on a daily basis, specialty tools that I don't use very often but are necessary for the job, and other types of tools that aren't necessary but are very versatile that you might want to think about getting in the future. Some of these tools, a lot of you guys have probably seen before. Maybe some of you have never seen some of these tools before, and this might not be interesting to all of you, but it may be interesting to some, so I'm going to put this out there. Also, I want to thank you guys for subscribing. I finally passed 2,000 subscribers, so I do this for you guys. Thank you for subscribing, commenting, and hitting the like button, so let's get into this.
I was sitting out there in the shed one evening, not doing too much of nothing, just kind of staring at the wall.
Alright, so as far as tools are concerned that I use on a daily basis, this air compressor is one of those tools that I use on a daily basis. This is a very versatile tool. You can use this to inflate tires, run impact, run grinders, all sorts of things, all sorts of tools like air nailers and everything you can run off of an air compressor. Now this is a big expense for your shop. You can get smaller ones. I decided for this 60-gallon air compressor. These, like I said, are expensive. They're very handy, but they're not really necessary. You can do a lot of things without this air compressor. But other than that, it's just simple hand tools. You know, sockets, ratchets, pliers, pry bars. You want to get a good variety of these. You want to have, you know, small sockets, big sockets. It's all going to depend on what type of stuff you work on. And you know, I started out with just a basic set. One thing you want to make sure of is you need to have both metric and imperial. Now I know a lot of people want to call imperial standard or SAE, but the correct term is imperial measurement. So you want to make sure you have a variety of sockets for the type of stuff that you're working on. Ratchets, you can go a little cheap on this. You ain't got to go buy, you know, expensive Snap-on or Mac tools or whatever. A lot of these tools that I use are Craftsman Tools and, you know, some stuff from Harbor Freight. You don't have to go expensive. For instance, I have cheap toolboxes. This is my Craftsman set. I've had this Craftsman set for 20 years. It served me well. It's got your both your imperial and your metric. It came with some wrenches and some screwdriver adapter bits, nut drivers, and all sorts of. This is a good kit to start with. So you can get these types of things from Harbor Freight, and that'll get you by on a lot of jobs. I've collected a lot of sockets along the way. You know, 1/2-inch drive, 3/8 drive, 1/4-inch drive, adapters. You can get sockets that are Allen wrench heads, all sorts of different tools. Nut drivers, swivels are very handy. You can get these in various sizes and various configurations. I have a bunch of extensions and breaker bars and just all sorts of these hand tools, ratchets of varying sizes. I've collected a lot of this stuff along the way. I didn't start out buying all this stuff. You know, I got my imperial wrenches here, Allen wrenches, metric wrenches, lots of pick tools, punches and drifts, all sorts of tools that I use on a daily here in my shop. Screwdrivers, scissors and cutting tools. So that's the kind of stuff that I use in here on a daily basis. I use these tools for general repair work, maintenance, and stuff like that. Okay, other types of tools that I use in my shop on a daily basis are vises. This is a drill press vise. You can mount this on your drill press if you have one, or this works good as a bench vise, you know, just to set up on your bench to hold things. I also have this vise. This is a jeweler's vise. It used to have a suction cup on the bottom and a little lever so you can suction this down to like a flat surface. But I just use this here on the bench to hold different things. You know, it's got notches in it to hold round objects and whatnot. I just thought this was a cool little vise. It's got a little anvil on the back of it. Other types of bench vises. This is my primary vise right here. This is a big guy. I use this thing for all sorts of stuff. As you can tell, it's all beat up. This is an old vise and it's very well made. It's very strong. It does not have removable jaws, but this is a very good vise. It swivels, you know, this way. I use that thing all the time. I also have another bench mounted vise here, and this one does have removable jaws. This is also a very old vise. You know, it's got a lever here so it can swing this way. It also has an anvil on the back of it, and this is very handy for doing all sorts of things. And also have this vise over here. I use this for a lot of my fabrication work, welding and whatnot. It also has an anvil on the back of it, and it's the same as the others. It swivels this way. And having a vise for me is vital. You need to be able to clamp things. These things are versatile. You can press things together, squeeze things, hold things. All sorts of things can be done with a vise, and I use this all the time. Other types of tools that I use pretty much on a daily basis when I'm doing specifically troubleshooting is voltmeters, DVOMs, DMMs. There's all sorts of styles of these that have different features and functions, have different, you know, are used well in different applications. You can pick these things up from Harbor Freight pretty cheap. Like I think this one's like $5, and I just added some alligator clips to the end because it makes it easier, you know, for certain situations to be able to just clamp things, because you know we only have two hands. So you also have analog meters. Now these are nice because something like this, if the 9-volt battery in this starts to go dead, you will get inaccurate readings, where as something like this, it's going to give you a more accurate reading if you're just unsure if your numbers are bouncing around or whatever, and you don't really trust this thing. Something like an analog meter, you know, might give you a more accurate reading. Now these are very inexpensive. These are $5–10 a piece. You can get more expensive ones. Fluke is a brand that a lot of people use. They're a very trusted brand. I got this from Harbor Freight. It is an Ames. This is actually a very good tool, even though it came from Harbor Freight. It was a little expensive. I think I paid $80 for this. It comes with this nice case, and it comes with a bunch of accessories. This tool is so versatile. You can use it to track wires through the wall, power. You know, it has a non-contact voltmeter. It has temperature probes. It holds min-max range. It does a lot of features. So something like this is my primary troubleshooting tool when it comes to electronical parts and wiring. Now to go with that, I also use a lot of these jumper wires. I get these from Harbor Freight. These are cheap. They're inexpensive. They don't carry a lot of amperage, but a lot of times you don't need to carry a lot of amperage just for testing and troubleshooting. So I use these tools very frequently. I would suggest at least starting with a cheap one. You know, if you need to do some basic battery voltage tests or whatever, this will get you by on a lot of different jobs. But as you progress, you may want to get something more expensive that has a lot more features. Alright, since I'm on the subject of electrical work, these are a lot of the tools that I use on a daily basis working on electrical wiring, and a lot of these tools you can get pretty cheap. Like this is from Harbor Freight, the soldering iron. This is I believe this is a 15-watt soldering iron. Hell, I couldn't tell you, but this does all of my soldering. I've never had a need for an expensive soldering iron. You know, the solder that goes with it. So this is primarily how I like to connect wires. I'll solder it together, and then I'll use a heat shrink. A good quality heat shrink is key for longevity. This heat shrink comes from Harbor Freight, and it's got the hot glue inside, so when you heat this up, that glue, you know, comes out and coats everything for a nice watertight connection. Also, I use a lot of these butt connectors and all these different ring style connectors. A lot of this stuff I use pretty regularly, and you can get these cheap from Harbor Freight, this little kit. Now this is a connector crimper. This is for these style of connectors, and this is a special tool that I bought just for the purpose of crimping these. You can get crimpers like this. I have found that they will work, but they're not real, they don't make a real reliable crimp connection. This style is much better. You can, this is a cheaper one. I think I gave like 20 bucks for this, but you can get Mac Tools or Snap-on crimpers that are way better than this. It does have cutters on the end. Moving on, a good set of wire strippers. Like this is designed specifically for stripping wires, whereas this tool here will strip wires. It's got a wire stripper in it, but even though it crimps and strips, it doesn't do either or very great. So I've upgraded to this type of crimper and this type of wire stripper, so I'll have these three tools out when I'm doing wiring repairs. Also, a good set of side cutters or side dikes, whatever you want to call these. These are from Ace. These are probably as old as I am. The jaws are hardened. These are very good side cutters. I have multiple side cutters, but I always come to these first. Now, when I'm doing a lot of soldering, I will use this contraption. I think a lot of places where you would look this up, they would call it a helping hand. I like to call it a three-headed gator just because it's got 3 alligator clips on it, and you can articulate this in all different ways. You can hold things to solder, hold wires together, and this is a lot of the tools that I use in this shop all the time when I'm working on wiring repairs. Now, other types of tools that I use in my shop on a daily basis, everything I work on pretty much has a battery, seems like, and batteries are always a problem, and they're always going dead. So I have a variety of battery chargers. Now, this battery charger here, this is a big guy. These, you know, aren't cheap. And this has the feature of being able to jump start a car. I use these for automotive batteries, you know, your car batteries. I wouldn't use this on a motorcycle battery because the lowest amperage it goes is 2 amps, and that's kind of hot for a motorcycle or an ATV battery. But this does 6 volts. It has a timer on it, and this thing gets used quite a bit in this shop. But the battery charger that I use more than this are these little battery chargers, like battery tenders. Now, if you keep a battery at full charge all the time, it will last a lot longer, because when a battery goes dead, it never seems to really charge back up all the way. So maintaining a battery is the best way to get longevity out of a battery. Now, this is a Schumacher brand. You can pick these up at Walmart, or you can get them online or whatever. This type of charger is usually plugged into a battery on, like, say, a motorcycle that in the off season I'm not riding a lot. I will plug this into the battery and I will just leave it plugged into the battery. This is a new one I just picked up, and I'm not real big on fancy stuff, whereas this has an LCD screen and it senses temperature. It's got all kinds of features to it, and I'm still trying this one out. The thing I like about this type of battery charger the most is it has battery repair function, which is a battery desulfator. What it does is it pulses the charge on and off rapidly, and so far this seems to be working out pretty well, bringing a not so great battery back up to charge. I also have this battery charger, and this is what's called a smart charger, which we all know how smart things go sometimes. This type of battery charger, it will only charge a battery that has voltage. So if your battery is below a certain voltage, this won't even sense that it's hooked up to a battery. Although this battery charger will turn on and off as needed as the battery is charged, and it will shut off, and then if the battery is discharged, it'll turn back on. So this is a good battery charger, you know, if you're not in the position to where you can just watch or wait for a battery to get charged. Now, this type of battery charger, this is not smart. This is one of the dumbest battery chargers you can get, and I really like this charger because it will charge a battery even if it's completely dead. 0 volts doesn't matter, and this will continue to charge even though the battery is fully charged, because sometimes you need to boil a battery to get it to come back a little bit. So it has 6 volt plus 2 amp ratings for 12 volt, and this thing will cook a battery, and I love this battery charger. Now, once you've got your battery charger of choice, there's other tools that I use to check the condition of batteries, and this here is what's called a battery hydrometer. And what you do is you stick this down in the battery fluid and you suck some of the fluid up in there, and then that float in the center there will float up, and wherever the level of the fluid is will tell you the specific gravity of the fluid. And there's a spec. You can look up the battery manufacturer what the specific gravity is supposed to be, and there's numbers. It's kind of hard to focus on that, but there's numbers on that, and that will tell you what the specific gravity is in the battery for each specific cell. and this is nice to determine whether a battery is good or bad or just needs charged. Another type of battery tester is this guy right here. This is a load tester, and you hook this up to the battery and you push this. It's basically got a heating element in here, and it puts a load on the battery, and it'll tell you if the battery's bad when you hit this button. So this is a good tool to use to determine whether a battery is good or bad, and these I use in my shop all the time. Okay, moving on. These are also the types of tools that I use in my shop, usually on a daily basis. There's all types of clamps and clamping devices. These are used for welding. I have multiple different sizes of these. These are all vice grip brands. There's a bunch of different brands out there. You don't have to, spend a bunch of money on these types of stuff. You can cheap out on this a little bit. C-clamps. Got various sizes of C-clamps. These are very useful for a lot of things. These type of woodworking clamps I use a lot. I don't work on wood, but these do come in handy a lot for holding things, and vice grips, actual locking pliers. In my opinion, there's no better vice grip than a vice grip. They make other brands. This is a Stanley. You got to be careful buying cheap vice grips, because a lot of times the jaws won't be hardened and they just won't clamp well. So if you can afford it, buy a good name brand vice grip. You don't have to buy. I didn't buy all this all at once. A lot of these tools I've collected over the years that I've been doing this. I've been working on stuff since I was 5 years old. I got an itch for it, so I just continued and collect tools. So ways to clamp and hold things is vital in my shop. Now, a lot of the stuff I work on has tires, so I have assortment tools here specifically working on tires. It comes down to, installing tire plugs. There's a couple different designs in these tools. These are handy because you can get a really good grip on these. These are handy because they are small and compact. You can keep them in a backpack if you're out riding, or in the glove box of your car. Of course, you're going to need a tire gauge. This is for ATVs. It only goes up to 5 pounds. The stick type where you put, you know what I'm talking about. And then the tire inflator, it's got a gauge on it itself. Valve stem repair tools. You got a spot on there to take the valve core out. This will thread where the valve core threads into. This is to clean out the spot where the valve core seats, and it also will repair the threads on the outside of the valve stem. So this is a very handy tool to have. Removing tires, tire spoons. You can get a set of these pretty cheap. There's 3 of these, so you need 3 of them. 1 or 2 won't work. You have to have 3. It comes with tire protectors. It's a good little kit to buy. Big tire spoons and levers. And for more permanent repairs of tires, patches, patch plugs. You want to use a good vulcanizing glue for those. A tool to roll the patches out after you've adhered them. I got all sorts of different size patches, and this is one of my favorite products here. This is bead sealer. So you put this on the bead of the tire to seal, a rusty wheel or a tire that has a torn bead or something like this. This works great for sealing up leaks in tires, and this is the assortment of tools that I use for tire repair. And on top of that, I also bought this tire changer assembly here. This is from Harbor Freight. This isn't the greatest tool you can buy. There's probably better ones out there. This top section is for working on motorcycle wheels, and I've had to do some adjustments and modifications to get this to work for my applications. The bottom section is for car tires, and it has a bead breaker, where I use the bead breaker on this more than I use this entire machine for. This doesn't make tire changing easy, it just makes it possible for some tires. So this is a good thing to have if you work on a lot of tires. Alright, so I've talked about tools that I use in my shop on a daily basis. I want to talk about tools that I hope I never have to use in my shop, and that is fire extinguishers. If you work in a shop and you use torches or welders or grinders or anything, these tools are a must-have in your shop. and you always want to make sure that they're good. You can see there's a little gauge on here and that arrow is pointing in the green. That means that this extinguisher is good. And I've noticed that this little extinguisher I have, this needs replaced. So I'm going to have to get another little extinguisher like this to replace this one. But these are a must-have in any workshop where there's sparks, flames, or welding slag. So get you some of these and hope you never have to use them. Okay, other tools that I wouldn't say I use every single day, but I do use a lot, and that is cutting and grinding tools. So you get angle grinders, you can get sanding wheels and grinder wheels and cut-off wheels. There's all different flavors of attachments that you can, or blades or whatever, you can put on these. You know, you got high-speed cut-off tools. This is a pneumatic one. You got angled die grinders, you got straight die grinders. I've got this chop saw, hack saws. Of course, this one's, I broke the blade on this one, but you know, scroll saws, or some people will call this a fret saw. This little gadget here is pretty handy because you can put broken hacksaw blades in it and still use your broken hacksaw blade. So this just folds open and, you know, kind of pinches that blade in there so you can use it. But alongside that, bench grinders, where I have this one on a pedestal so I can move this one around the shop wherever I need it. I usually just keep it right over here. And I have another big grinder here. I've got a wire wheel and a very coarse stone. These are very handy. You don't have to have these, but I do use these tools very frequently. You can, however, do a lot of this work with nothing more than a file. There's all different sizes and shape files out there, although these require a lot of handwork, but these can achieve what a lot of these tools can do with this one simple type of tool. Alright, next on my list of tools that I use in my shop pretty much on a daily basis is hammers, chisels, drifts, and center punches. So all different shapes and sizes of these. There's some oddball looking tools out there. It's just whatever you can collect to get the job done. Rubber mallets are handy. Brass hammers are expensive, but they're necessary. You know, the BFH hammers. All these different hammers have their place. Homemade and handmade hammers. So collecting these types of tools and using these in the shop are crucial to a lot of different jobs. Okay, moving on to tools, special tools that I don't use every day but are necessary for the job. And I've just got an assortment of different specialty tools that I have acquired, and this is just scratching the surface, the tip of the iceberg. And I can go on for hours about talking about specialty tools and everything that you might need, and you won't know you need it until you gotta have it. So just for an example here, brake line bending tools, windshield removal, compression test, impact drivers, chain breakers, carburetor synchronizers, torque wrenches, snap ring pliers, 2 and 3 jaw pullers. We got valve spring compression tools, special hub tools, special flywheel tools, and you never know which one of these tools you're going to need until you need it. And this is where the big money starts coming in when you start buying tools, is you never know what you're going to need until you need it. So just keep that in mind. You might get into a job that you're going to have to order a special tool. Depending on the types of stuff you work on, it's going to depend on the type of special tool that's required. Now, me personally, I work on all kinds of different stuff, so I have all kinds of different specialty tools to get the job done, and I won't even be able to come close to all the specialty tools that are out there. So just so you know, you may need a special tool. Tap and die sets. These are tools that I use pretty often. Don't use them all the time, but when you need this tool, you have to have the tool. And one thing I want to say about tap and die sets is don't cheap out. Like for instance, this Harbor Freight Pittsburgh Harbor Freight kit here. This won't tap threads into a piece of steel that doesn't already have threads in it. You will wreck these taps. These are made out of inferior metals. So if you're going to be doing this work a lot, do not buy cheap tap and die sets. Now this tap and die set I got at an automotive shop called Smythe. I've bought this, I don't know, 25 years ago. This has been a very good tap and die set, and I rely on this tap and die set. They make these in both metric and imperial, so you'll have to have a metric set and an imperial set. These can be expensive, although you got to watch, because you can spend a lot of money on a tap and die set that isn't very good. Here's another example. Tap and die set. This is also a Pittsburgh from Harbor Freight. This tap and die set is no good. I only use this if I just need to clean up some threads or something like that. Here's another example of a high quality tap and die set. This has multiple sizes. This is only in imperial sizes. I do not have a set like this in metric. So just keep in mind that you may need an expensive tap and die set to get the job done. And just to add to tap and die sets, you can buy these taps and dies individually. So if you know what size thread you need to cut or to repair, you can just go to your local parts store and they might have a selection of these that you can buy individually, and that's a good way to get around having to buy an expensive tap and die set. Alright, another example of specialty tools that I don't use on a daily basis, but when you have to have it, you have to have it, and that is jacks and jack stands. You got your floor jacks, your motorcycle ATV jacks, bottle jacks, scissor jacks, jack stands, and these are essential to doing a lot of jobs where you have to pick up heavy things. Or I do have pairs of these, I just brought one out, but anyway, jacks are essential to doing a lot of jobs, especially if you're going to work on automobiles. You need a good floor jack. If you're going to work on a lot of motorcycles or ATVs, this ATV jack is very handy. And as far as bottle jacks goes, these bottle jacks are very versatile. You can use them in a lot of different applications. And I keep a scissor jack out of a car, for jack, this is like a factory jack for a car. I just put a plate on the top so that I can use it here in the shop, and I just need a lightweight, light duty jack. So more tools that you have to acquire to get the job done. Examples of tools that you don't necessarily have to buy. You're not going to use these things a lot, but are very versatile, and if you get one, you'll find multiple uses for. And one of those is a shop press. Now my shop press happens to be 60,000 pounds, and I use this thing for a lot of different stuff. It's not just pushing and bearing. I use this a lot for oddball stuff, pressing stuff, crushing stuff, making stuff flat. This is a very versatile tool here. So if you can afford to get one of these, I would advise getting one of these, and you won't go wrong. Just stay away, because some of these cheap, offshore presses are not worth your money. This is a good high quality, it even says high quality right there. So if you're going to buy a press and you're not going to need it to do big heavy jobs, you can cheap out. But if you're going to be doing a lot of pressing, or you feel like you might in the future, go ahead and spend the money and buy a good press. Another tool that you won't use a lot but is very versatile is a shop crane. I bought this shop crane from Harbor Freight probably 20 plus years ago, and this has been a great tool. Not had any problems with it. It's always worked when I needed to. The shop cranes you get from Harbor Freight nowadays, they're very small and they're made out of cheap materials. I would stay away from those. I would look for a better one. But if you feel like you're not going to use it a lot, then the Harbor Freight might be okay. I wouldn't buy the shop crane that Harbor Freight offers today if you're going to be pulling out car engines. I don't think it's really safe. Do use your best judgment on that. But find yourself a good quality shop crane if you feel like you need it. I use this thing to pick up stuff that's too heavy for me to lift all the time. It's light enough that I can load this in the bed of my truck and take it places. So this is a tool, like I said, a specialty tool that I don't use a lot, that you don't necessarily have to have, but is very versatile. Now moving to my right here is another tool that you can get away with not having, but it's very versatile, and that is an oxyacetylene torch rig. You can weld with this, you can cut with this, you can heat with this. There's so many things that you can do with an oxygen acetylene torch rig. In most cases, if you just need to heat something up, these little propane and MAP gas torches will get you through a lot of different situations. Now, from my understanding, the MAP gas isn't actually MAP gas anymore. It's some kind of other gas, and it's not quite as hot as MAP gas, but I guess they stopped making it. You guys can correct me down in the comments if you want, but these types of small torches will get you through a lot of different issues, and they're inexpensive and very versatile. And while I'm on the subject of these propane torches, these bottles, you know, they vary in price depending on where you live quite a bit. And I have found this little adapter. I got this off of Amazon for like $15, and there's a lot of controversy on doing this, but I haven't had an issue with it. But you thread this into a 20-pound propane tank, you know, like for your grill, for your barbecue grill, and you can refill these 1-pound cylinders off your 20-pound tank. Now, you can theoretically fill this 20 times off of one 20-pound tank, and this I have found is very, very useful for refilling these and keeping costs down. But if you're going to refill these, do your research, use your best judgment. There is some safety concerns here, so I just got to put that in there. All right, another example of a very versatile tool that you don't necessarily have to have is a welder. This is a MIG welder. It's a gas MIG welder, and I couldn't live without a welder, to be honest. I find I can fix so many things owning a welder, and this specific snap-on welder comes with attachments. So down in this drawer here, I have a scratch start TIG and an aluminum spool gun. So this makes this machine a very versatile machine. And like I said, I'll say it again, I can't live without a welder. There's a lot of inexpensive welders out there. You can get gasless, flux core, you can get TIG welders, stick welders, all different types of flavors and brands. So use your best judgment. Prices of these things can be astronomical. So just get what you think you can afford. You will find more uses for something like this in the future, so consider that an investment. Drill presses, like I say, this is a versatile tool. You can do a lot of drilling and different operations with this. Not a necessary item. These vary in size and price, and the ability to drill holes. So this is something you might want to look for getting in the future. That being said, a hand drill will do a lot of the drilling that a drill press will do. These are much cheaper, these are much more versatile, and this is another option which I think a lot of you have. I got corded drills. I haven't really went into battery stuff because I have an air compressor, and most of my tools are based around air compressors, like my impactors and my air ratchets, stuff like that. So I have this nice corded drill. The beauty of this thing is the battery will never run dead and it will always have full power. But the downsides of this is I can't take this out of the shop and go drill holes like out in the middle of the yard with it without a generator. Okay, another example of a specialty tool that you don't necessarily need, and it's very versatile, is a plasma cutter. Now, this is a cheap plasma cutter because when in the plasma cutter world, the prices can go way up. So I got this off of Amazon. It was cheap. It works quite well. I've had some issues with it, which I'm not going to get into now. So use your best judgment on plasma cutters if you want to start getting into plasma cutting. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this sitting in the background of a lot of my videos. This is a tubing bender. This thing will bend tube. You wouldn't believe the capabilities that this thing can do. Now, this machine here is quite expensive. It's not as expensive as you know, when you start getting into tubing bending machines, this is actually quite cheap. But for the home hobbyist or the home shop, this is quite an expensive investment. And I bought this just because I wanted it, and I have a lot of uses that I want to use this for in the future. So don't think you got to go out and go buy a tubing bender. Yeah. Aside from a tubing bender, This is a pipe bender, and the difference between pipe and tube is when you ask for a 2-inch tube, it's going to be the outside diameter of the tube that's going to be 2 inches. Now when you're talking about pipe, you're talking about the inside diameter. So if you want a 2-inch pipe, it's going to be 2 inches on the inside. Now this is a pipe bender. Now this can do a lot of things that a tubing bender can do, but the thing you got to worry about is the different size dies that you get may not fit with tubing. So if you're just doing pipe, well, I'm talking about like waterline pipe or conduit pipe, that this thing will bend. The other machine will do actual tubing, like structural tubing for building go-karts or buggies or handrails. So this is another tool that's very versatile that you don't necessarily have to have. Okay, coming down to this machine here, this is probably one of the most versatile machines that you could ever buy as far as tools go, is a lathe, a metal engineer's lathe. This machine tool here that I have has been so used. I use this thing. I find so many uses for this machine here, and this is a pretty big expense, and I don't expect everybody to just go out and buy a lathe, you know, but if you can afford to buy a lathe, I want to give you some advice. Don't buy the Harbor Freight mini lathe unless you already have a bigger lathe like this. You can buy these lathes, look on Marketplace, look on the internet. This lathe was made in 1945. It is a heavy duty. It will cut stainless steel. It'll cut everything. It is very accurate, and it runs very well. Everything is smooth, and I picked this up at my local steel shop. They had this for sale, and I just couldn't pass it up. I've always wanted a lathe and got this lathe, and I cannot live without a lathe now. So stay away from the Harbor Freight lathes, because they're not going to do a lot of work unless you're just making small parts in plastic or aluminum. You need to get a decent lathe. There is so many tools in the world that I can go on for not just hours but days talking about tools. There's tools that I've never seen, tools that I've never used, so many tools in the world. And when it comes to tools, don't go out and spend a bunch of money all of a sudden on tools, because you don't know if you're really going to need that tool, and if it's an expensive tool, it might have been a waste of money. A lot of times you can borrow or rent tools, so just buy what you need as you need it and start a collection. If you're going to be working on stuff like I do, it's your tool chest is going to look different than my tool chest depending on what you work on. So I just wanted to kind of make this video, you know, to give you an example of all the tools out there and the stuff that I use on a daily basis and the things that make me able to do the things I do. Well, I kind of just wanted to show off my tools, but that's besides the point. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and don't be afraid to fix it. Thanks for watching.